welcome to the show. Over the last couple of weeks, you saw some things unfolding regarding SAHUC, and many people have been asking questions. We did that episode with Imam Hashim Sali. Some things went well and others didn't, and as a subsequent to that, I've invited Shaheen Essop, and he is the president of SAHUC, and he's going to talk about some of those issues that we didn't manage to deal with, set certain records straight, hopefully, and go forward from there. My intention, of course, and my position is always to stand right in the center, understand issues with the perspective of going forward. And I think the public and SAHUC needs to understand that I don't have, and I'm not going to say this throughout the program, again, like I did last time, but my position is fairly clear, and that is that I don't have a position on SAHUC, and I don't have a position on your thoughts. But I'm just there to have robust discussion so that we as a community can go forward. As you've seen the last couple of days, we have lots of issues happening around South Africa. Leadership is under question. Integrity and leadership is in discussion. And so we need to talk about those things, and that's what we're going to do. Assalamu alaikum, Shaheen. Welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah Faizal for having me on DTV.
Thank you. So we see, and I'm going to go very directly into that. I love the idea that you've agreed to come onto the show because I want to initially reflect on the previous episode for starters, and once we look at that episode, we then can go forward in some of the new issues that I want to talk about. I think it also allows SAHUC an opportunity at the same time to talk about things that perhaps, as you mentioned to me previously, is continually communicated, but sometimes there's disconnects around, and we need to continue reconnecting those disconnects. I want to go into the previous episode for starters, and my brief analysis is, and I need to touch on this, as sour as it might be, and that is that, in my view, and no insult to anyone at all, but Imam Hashim Sali, I think that, and this is no personal inhibition on this, I think that the public was totally not happy with the answers he's given me there. I think that there was and I'm being very frank about this, what I'm getting from the public is a high display of arrogance, ignorance at the same time, I'm sorry to say that, and with all of that, there wasn't a sponge effect by the public to say, let me absorb your answers. So that didn't go down well at all. Must be honest and frank in saying that I think it was a bad representation of SAHUC, and you can deal with that in your own time down the line. But I think part of it is to try and repair some of those issues that got disconnected there in the first place. I want to rehash some of the questions that we have that were sitting there that continually came up because I don't think people found solace in those answers. And perhaps starting off with, again, and I don't want to sound like the last episode, but I posed the question about people saying that you operate like the Mafia. His answer to that was, everybody calls us that. Now, that's a very bad answer, but I take it that you'd perhaps have a better approach to answering that question.
I think before we go into answering that question, the most important factor we need to understand is we're not here to talk about Imam Hashim or Imam Hashim's display of, response to your program. It's unfortunate that, I wasn't able to come down at that time because I had other commitments. We're all busy. We do what we do for SAHUC in a voluntary capacity. And as a result of that, we do have a life outside of SAHUC in this regard. But your question needs to be answered in terms of people out there calling us a mafia. No, we're not a mafia. We run a shura process with different policies and processes. We run a corporate governance structure where everything that we do internally is, stands up to scrutiny under corporate governance and certain corporate processes. We have a tremendous amount of professional people around the table, be it on the board level or be it on NGC level, National General Council level, that certainly are able to help us to assess and to navigate our way through administration and regulation of the Hajj process in South Africa. people may want to call us mafia out there because of the responses that they get. For example, if someone were to come to you with a query that, the husband is accredited and the two daughters are accredited and he's the mahram and he's made Hajj before and they haven't, but the wife hasn't made Hajj, and we give them a point-blank answer saying, I'm sorry, we cannot accommodate you because of the scarcity of quota in South Africa, then you get accused of being a mafia. But if you come
so it's not from an operational point of view.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
And I don't want to go back into this issue of threatening and all of that. In your view, there's no other such activity at all?
No, definitely not. And we don't threaten people. You talk about threat. We never ever threaten people. But I do think we need to set the record straight that if someone is going to call us corrupt and someone is going to provide information on a public platform that they have absolutely no knowledge of, then they need to come to the table. One such incident happened about a couple of months ago, and we invited the person who had put that out to come and have a conversation with us. And after the conversation, if that person still felt that they wanted to go forth and, on their crusade, they were welcome to do so. But alhamdulillah, the person then decided that, an unequivocal apology needs to be put onto the Facebook page, which was certainly done. And alhamdulillah, we appreciate that. But understand, we have, like everybody else in South Africa, we've been taken to court and people will want to take us to court on different matters. Our processes and our policies have stood up in a court of law, and we would do the same in order to defend SAHUC. I mean, I need to understand that, from a perspective of being the president of this organization, we have a constitution. We are a constituted body, not for personal gain. So we run this organization according to that process. We work according to the rules that are laid out by that constitution in order to ensure good corporate governance, good administration, and good regulation throughout the process of Hajj.
So if you define SAHUC again in terms of operations and in public terms and in lay terms, what is it that SAHUC encompasses? What's that service to the public itself?
SAHUC is the custodian of the visas issued from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to South Africa. And this was done back in 1995 when the South African Department...
That's on the Hajj side?
Yes, I'll give you a full explanation. In terms of the Department of Foreign Affairs that have basically sat down with the Ministry of Hajj at the behest of the Ministry of Hajj in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to put together this particular structure and this body. I think it was mentioned on your previous program that even political parties were members of our organization until recent years when they decided not to be a part of this process because it was more of a religious angle, relating to the fifth pillar of Islam. In Umrah, SAHUC was also given the right to regulate this back in 1995, but we didn't because the Umrah process is a very different one. Regulated Umrah operators who will have to be IATA operators. Now there's a significant, financial implication in this. They need to be IATA operators, which cost them about 600,000 to 700,000 rands. They need to have the necessary infrastructure. They then need to have an MOU with an organization in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And with that MOU comes a 1 million rial, guarantee. That's, quite excessive in terms of 1 or 2 million. My memory serves me. Almost 4 million rand. The point being that it is quite an excessive exercise. In South Africa right now, there are 9 accredited Umrah operators with the Ministry of Hajj. But unfortunately, we have almost 40.
Only 9?
Yes.
That's astonishing because
on the
one goes out
website
and sees lots of brands out there.
Absolutely, and this is the problem. SAHUC has been talking to the, to the trade, to the Umrah trade for many a year to try and find a process to regulate the structure, to bring a little bit more of sanity into the Umrah market. Unfortunately, people trying to protect their own enclave and their own, personal gains in this particular aspect, that you'll find, every man and his dog on the side of the road wants to do Umrah because they find it so lucrative. If you just look at the number of people that travel to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, whether it be for Hajj or Umrah, Hajj is 2,000, increased this year to 2,500. They took away 20% from us 5 years ago, and they've reintroduced that 20% this year. Umrah, a total of between 36 and 40,000 people make Umrah every year. Now go and do the maths, see where's more lucrative and where there are more structures involved in this whole situation. The type of streamlined process that we put into Hajj needs to be replicated in Umrah. We don't want to regulate the Mu'tamir. We want to regulate the Umrah operators out there. As recent as last night, Faizal, 58 people sitting in Medina without accommodation.
Yes, we're aware of that one, yes.
I was given that task, and alhamdulillah, one of my members of SAHUC is in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We alerted the Consul General, and people were put up in a hotel about half an hour after we intervened. But the point being that they should never be put into that situation.
Correct, yes. After, Shaheen, I perhaps want to just look at that again. I think that what everyone needs to understand about Hajj and Umrah is that there's very deep constructs within people. People, it's one of the 5 pillars. They attach lots of importance, and with all due respect to the other pillars of Islam, but the mosque down the road, being Salah, you can go all the time, you're going to fast every year, whatever. But the Hajj seems to be the most limited of the 5 pillars, giving you this 1 or 2 opportunities in your life, wherever you find yourself, to go there and do what you do. So the excitement is there and all that kind of thing, and then all of it tumbles down in some way or another as we go down, and questions start coming out about various things. I don't want to go into fraudulent operators right now. I want to go through that a bit later in the interview. But as you have defined SAHUC's operations, that's how you define your operation. But what I have noticed is that you do call yourself the South African Hajj and Umrah Council. I do find much more focus on the Hajj side. Is there a particular reason why? Because people are sort of expecting SAHUC to also pull up the power, those that are in favor of what you do, of course, into the Umrah space and intervene on issues like last night.
But that's exactly what I was explaining a little bit earlier, and we do get involved in the intervention of issues like last night at the latter stages. Albeit that some of the operators are of the opinion that we don't regulate Umrah and we should stay out of the Umrah space. We were given that mandate back in 1995, and unfortunately, due to us being a voluntary organization where all of us have day jobs and none of our executive are paid to do what we do for the South African Hajj and Umrah Council, it was not in our capacity to run the Umrah regulation as well. We are certainly thinking of longevity and permanency in SAHUC, and as a result of that, want to bring that on board, and we're in serious discussions with the Ministry of Hajj Umrah Division as well as with our Department of International Relations and Cooperation, and inshallah we hope to get that right. You know, Faizal, some years back there were over 42 Hajj operators back in 2005, 2006. The year that I joined SAHUC, only in the Gauteng region alone, there were 89 complaints after Hajj that year in Gauteng only, not countrywide. In the last 5 years, there haven't been more than 4 to 5 complaints countrywide in the Hajj structure. So it gives you an understanding of the streamline, the process that we have put into Hajj, that we have done to ensure that when a Hajj operator is accredited by SAHUC and the Haji is accredited, that Haji goes to that Hajj operator, they are now going to be satisfied that all the work that is going to be done is going to be above board and bona fide in terms of the logistics relating to Hajj. Yesterday was our cutoff for this year's Hajj, for Hajj operators to make the minimum number of 50 pilgrims as per the protocol from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We've removed some Hajj operators from there. So we had 20 original applicants, and now there are only going to be 15 Hajj operators that will apply. And this is as a result of policy, process, code of conduct, and other structures that we have put into place. The same can be replicated in Umrah in order to protect the Mu'tamirin. But having said that, we also need to understand that the Mu'tamirin must not be gullible.
Correct.
The Mu'tamirin must not be gullible in the sense that every man on the street corner is not an Umrah operator. They cannot look at the price is cheap and I must go and book with this particular person, because that is going to get you into a lot of trouble. Last night's situation, let's just run through that. The operator in question is not a registered operator, part of the 9 that are accredited. They had to go via...
So he's not part of the 9?
No, he's not. They had to go via...
They're fairly a big brand though.
They are a big brand, but they're still not part of the 9. They had to go via a third party to secure the visa. As a result of which, you have to ask the questions now. And this is where an investigation needs to come in. Did they pay the hotelier? Did they make the necessary bookings in the hotel? The person who is supposed to have taken this 58 people to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, is he knowledgeable enough, or is he savvy enough to be able to do that? All these things we cover in our application for Hajj operator accreditation. When we do this on an annual basis, we scrutinize it. We come to Cape Town, we go to Durban, we go through Johannesburg, and we have a one-on-one interview like you and I are having now with each prospective applicant in order to ensure that we don't have that problem in Hajj as is currently happening in Umrah.
I want to go down to the operators a bit later on.
Sure.
And just go through a few aspects around operators. But just getting back to SAHUC itself, the questions that people have is around legitimacy. And I know that just before the show, we spoke about the incorporation of SAHUC through talks between the South African government and the Saudi Arabian government, and therefore the formation of that. The question that people still have around legitimacy is individual authorizations and individual legitimacy. And people are saying, so I get all of that. government has said this needs to be done and thou shalt be done. But how did those individuals get into those positions? Now, before you answer that, I'm not certain if this question comes from personal inhibitions to attack certain individuals, and I'm just being fair to both parties, yourself and the public around that, or I'm not sure if there's a genuine concern as to how did they get there. Was there an elective process? Did they come up through a stream? Just for our viewers to understand that.
Let's give you an example of my involvement in SAHUC. Back in 2006, I wrote to SAHUC and I basically pointed out some issues that I saw with SAHUC when I went on Hajj in 2003. I gave them the pros, I gave them the cons, and I gave them some of the solutions. So constructive criticism was put on the table. I was then invited to come and do a presentation at the Gauteng region, which I duly did. I was invited to stay on as an individual member, public member, which alhamdulillah I then decided to take up the cudgels and I joined up, because you can't put forward a proposal and then not follow it through. And alhamdulillah, through working through, we had organizations, organizational membership makes up the National General Council of SAHUC. I was asked by one of the organizational members to be their representative on SAHUC, and I went through that process. I was then represented in there. I became the deputy chairman of the region after a few years. I became the secretary general of SAHUC as a result of voting through the process of our membership. Currently we have 27 member organizations that make up the National General Council, and our board or our executive are elected from within that National General Council. So any organization who wants to become part and parcel of this structure called SAHUC is welcome to apply. For example, if we're sitting in Cape Town and the Athlone Muslim Jama'ah decides from that masjid that they want to put forward a representation, they have a constitution, they have a letterhead, they have representativity, they're welcome to do that. And any other facility. So
that's open all the time?
It's open all the time. We've never closed.
Even too, there's people that has competed with you in the space in terms of trying to be watchdogs and that sort of thing.
We've invited them to become members of SAHUC, and they opted not to Hajj Watch. Yes. I mean, we have, as much as there may have been, not antagonism, but there may have been loggerheads that we've sat with. I mean, we've sat with Hajj Watch in the DIRCO or Department of Foreign Affairs mediations. We've gone through a long process. Myself and members of Hajj Watch have a very cordial relationship, and we have a very open relationship. So do other members of our organization as well. So we don't play the man. We play a process where people, if they have an issue with our organization, come and put forward a proposal. Faizal, we need to understand something. Perfection lies with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. SAHUC is not a perfect organization. There isn't one perfect organization in this country or in the world. But we're going to strive to do the best we can with the limited resources that we have in order to facilitate the best possible process for the Hujjaj from South Africa. I think that needs to be understood. Everybody would like to go for Hajj. We have currently first-time Hujjaj in excess of 22,000 in our queue. We have over 67,000 first-time and repeat Hujjaj in our queue, waiting to go for Hajj. We look at Malaysia. Malaysia has almost 1.6 million people in their queue. That's a 67-year waiting list. And they go through a process of government structure. So every country in the world has this unique problem of a scarcity of quota. 2,500 visas cannot be divided into 20,000 people. There has to be a process. It has to be date and time priority driven, given to first-time Hujjaj, repeat Hujjaj, where they're serving as mahram.
Of course. The constituency in terms of the bodies, the member bodies that make up SAHUC, those are, for example, if you can just name a few of them.
United Ulama Council South Africa, Muslim Judicial Council, Sunni Ulama Council, Sunni Jamiat, that's among the ulama bodies, Majlis Ashura al-Islami, the Islamic Council of South Africa.
You say you started with about 50 odd. Why has that interest dropped in SAHUC and now gone down to 27?
There's always going to be interest in SAHUC when there's shenanigans to be unfolded or unpacked. At this point in time, alhamdulillah, we sit with a scenario where things have been running quite smoothly. We've recently, put into perspective certain processes and structures and policies. And from year to year, we've not had any issues relating to SAHUC or relating to any of the internal issues around SAHUC. So alhamdulillah.
So they comprise of ulama bodies
and other organizations like OCAF South Africa. You've got Africa Muslim Agency, you've got
humanitarian operations.
Exactly, humanitarian organizations.
Are there any media operations on there?
No, there aren't any media operations on there. The media have opted to be independent, and I'm talking about all the radio stations, the TV stations like yourself, and ITV up in Gauteng, as well as all the media out there. Al Ansar, not radio, but Al Ansar Foundation is a member of SAHUC, but not through the media structures. And Al Ansar will deal with us as you would be dealing with us in this regard.
Are we sure about that? Because if we look at a situation like, for example, the MJC has a link to a radio station in Cape Town, and I sometimes wonder, is there not a conflict of interest if the MJC is sitting on the SAHUC board, and what then happens is that something goes wrong with SAHUC, and I'm talking about a general scenario, something goes wrong in SAHUC, and the MJC is part of it, but the MJC directs this radio station all the time. Is there not a conflict of interest when it comes to delivering information to the public?
Absolutely not. On the contrary.
Donald Trump would call it fake news.
No. On the contrary. Let me tell you, Faizal, we have a very, very strict policy in terms of media. Every announcement that we do goes out to all the media simultaneously. There is not bias towards one or the other. You can go and check the history of Voice of the Cape, or you can go check the history of Al Ansar, and look at the robust discussions that we've had. The late Munaja Karan, Allah granted Jannatul Firdaus, inshallah. I mean, we've had robust discussion on radio. Go and see what Radio Islam in Johannesburg does to us as well. So we don't have that situation where we're looking for biasness from any media structure or any media house. We will be asked the relevant questions, and we will answer it to the best of our ability. We have nothing to hide. We're a fully transparent organization, and we will work according to the policies and processes that have been laid down.
I know that you don't want to discuss certain individuals, but I have to ask you a frank question, and that is, does Imam Hashim Salih have? He's an accountant.
Mm-hmm.
Does he serve as an accountant for any of the Hajj or Umrah operators?
To my knowledge, he does. Yes, he does.
5 or 6 of them?
I don't know the exact number, but to my knowledge, he does.
Would that not be a conflict of interest either?
No, it isn't, because he doesn't sit on the body or on the subcommittee that deals with Hajj operators. He is totally away from that.
But he falls under SAHUC in any case.
Oh, he does fall under SAHUC. There's absolutely no question. I mean, at the end of the day, members can sit within SAHUC. We have a member of SATOA who sits on the board of SAHUC as an individual, because remember, our board does not represent organizations, but they represent individuals who are selected from within the structures to serve on the board. There's no biasness towards any of those particular situations or conflict of interest in that regard, and the same would happen with regards to Imam Hashim. I think the integrity of our organization is very, very well structured in terms of ensuring that people who have a vested interest in other businesses or in other structures certainly won't do that. I have a private company outside of my normal day-to-day work, and Imam Hashim looks after some of my accounts as well. So where's the conflict of interest in that? It's a process that one needs to understand. We have the National Hajj Operator Accreditation Committee that Imam Hashim has absolutely nothing to do with. So if he's going to be servicing a Hajj operator in terms of their books or whatever the case may be, we will view whatever is viewed upon exactly the same as we would view it from ABC Incorporated. We won't see it any differently. Believe me. In fact, I must tell you. Hang on. Let me finish. In fact, I must tell you that sometimes we actually scrutinize the information from that particular company more than we would from someone else. Just to make sure that there's no shenanigans.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I have no reason not to take your word for what you're saying. But you do get the general notion out there would be that if all of that is happening, that is there not a conflict of interest?
Where does one earn his or her rizq? Is there a line that one draws in terms of the situation? And I think if you look at the King 3 process, I don't know if you're familiar with King 3 in terms of corporate governance, as long as the entity is not involved in the actual approval or disapproval of entities that he has a direct interest in, that's when conflict of interest is raised. Unfortunately, that is not the case yet.
When you're talking about, and another issue that came up with conflict was the question around when you guys are in the kingdom itself on a mission. I think you call it the Hajj mission?
The protocol mission.
Yes.
There's two. There's the protocol mission where we sign the contracts for Hajj, and then there's the Hajj mission
where everyone's on Hajj, of course. So when you're on that particular mission, your accommodation is taken by operators itself.
We buy accommodation from them.
Yes, but
Yes.
when you're in the company of those organizations all the time, is there also not perhaps a conflict from the point of view that it's either them trying to provide you with a certain look and feel because you are SAHUC and you're staying in our accommodation, and you are living in an operator's accommodation area? Is there no conflict there at all?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Remember, these people are renting us accommodation. For example, we rent a building from one operator in Azizia. That's the only accommodation we rent from them. Because in Makkah and Medina, we rent it from totally independent people. The only reason we can't do that in Azizia is because we don't know
And that's
people.
the normal rates? at
Yes,
what
we
everyone
don't
else
get
is
any
paying?
preferential rates in regards to this.
Okay.
Nothing at all.
So, going back at the advent of SAHUC, one of the issues that people have is they're talking about the fees all the time, and I get it, that when you want to run an operation, there's cost involved. I get all of that. I'm hearing, and I need you to shed light on this, I'm hearing that people are saying that, and there was a resolution back in the day when SAHUC started, that said that we'll charge $50, but when our systems are up and running, then we won't charge any fees. Now, I'm not certain how an operation won't charge any fees in any case, but it's a question that one of the public members had.
Well, first of all, I wasn't around when SAHUC was formed back in the day. I came to SAHUC
I think
in
this is a
2006.
KZN resolution. I know that...
No, I think you're wrong, because there can never be a provincial executive resolution.
No. I think there was a meeting on that side. I'm not sure.
Allow me to explain, because I think one thing we need to get clear of is we have a structure in terms of how resolutions get passed. We have a National General Council, who are the policy driving body of SAHUC. We have a board that carries out those policies on a day-to-day basis in terms of process. Our constitution does hold that the board can make certain resolutions as long as it doesn't take the organization into a dimension that is contrary to the processes and policies laid down by the National General Council. We need to understand that. Back in the day, I joined SAHUC in 2006. There was a charge, if my memory serves me correct, between 300 and 400 rands. That 300 and 400 rands was charged for a period of about 5 or 6 years. And as time moved on, rand-dollar exchange rates fluctuate. Costs become a little bit more excessive. Our cost for accommodation, our cost for subsistence, our cost for medicines, our cost for airfare, that we have to supply to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And this is not because we thumbsuck it and we decide that we want to do this. This is an instruction from the Ministry of Hajj that you will provide a mission. In fact, on my way down this morning, I was actually reading this year's document. There's a 96-page document that we have to sit down and go through every single one of those clauses to ensure that we fulfill and we comply with what is required for the South African Hujjaj. And we have to put that into place. That comes at a cost. And that cost, unfortunately, has to come from the Hujjaj. We don't, as I said earlier, not one of the executive take a salary. Not one of us get paid. We have 3 offices around the country that we have to actually facilitate. So you have to pay rent, you have to run your expenses, you have to pay the staff that work there on a daily basis. This is what that money is used for. So if any such flares or any such thoughts from people in the community that this was a resolution, I'd like to see where that resolution is, because they need to bring that to the table. Because there's absolutely no such resolution that I can recall.
You fall under the Public Finance Management Act.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. So that means that any finances or anything that's going about, that's all out in the open. And I take it that you put your statements out.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of your audited statements goes
it's
on
our
your
website right now.
And all of that. If I may just ask off the top, what is currently sitting in SAHUC's bank account?
We have a surplus, but remember that surplus at the moment still needs to be accounted for in terms of expenses for this Hajj. Our financial year end was yesterday, 31st of March. So I'll be able to give you a figure as soon as our audit is complete.
Just a rough estimate?
There's a few million rand that's sitting in the account at the moment.
5-6 million?
No, not that big. Not that big at all.
What is that surplus used for?
That surplus is used for the continuity of SAHUC, and as I indicated earlier as well, the permanency process that we want to put into place. If we have to put permanency into place, there's got to be a lot of things that's going to come in and expense. But let's talk about the cost. You talk about this year's cost of 1,430 rands per Haji. We subsidize the Haji because our actual cost in terms of budget is about 1,620, 1,630 rands. And every year for the last 5 years, this has been the case. So people don't talk about that cost or that saving that, SAHUC facilitates in terms of this situation. When we sit down and we talk to other missions around the world, albeit that they may be government driven or not, there's costs that are paid as well from those particular perspectives. In Malaysia, you don't have a direct cost because people will bank money with Tabung Haji's Bank Islam. They use that money to invest, and from there they take proceeds from there to run the Hajj process. What are you doing? You're still taking the Haji's money, aren't you, in terms of that process? So there's a whole lot of different ways to look at it. We are open and transparent in terms of the process that we do.
You're saying that obviously none of the office bearers, they don't get anything out of this at all, and they're just putting their time into doing what they do. Okay, so I want to move on to the issue of contention at the moment.
Yeah, please.
And I've taken it somewhere else with regards to fraudulent operators. I think that as media we want to protect the public from fraudulent operators, and the way that we do that as media is to inform and educate people around all of those issues. We've been calling out with the likes of Shahid Stakala and Faizal Adams and the Carstens, and I say that very frankly because that laying on my table 45 cases that's unresolved. So whether the court says you've vindicated, I don't believe the court above vindicates you until those monies are returned. With all of that being said, people have called SAHUC out into this, saying that what is SAHUC doing? It's SAHUC's fault that this is happening. What's your response to something like that?
On the contrary, this cannot be SAHUC's fault because this is not in a Hajj environment.
No, but they say that
Allow me to finish.
Yes.
Allow me to finish. Our name may state South African Hajj and Umrah Council, but remember, at the end of the day, I've explained to you why we don't regulate Umrah in terms of the process. Earlier on, I also mentioned that the public also needs to be aware of what they need to do. SAHUC has publicized the listed and registered Umrah operators on our website. We provided it in the past years to various media houses for them to publicize on their platforms as well. And yet, despite all of that...
You're talking about Umrah operators?
Yes, right. And despite all of that, Mu'tamirin will still go and book with the likes of people whom you have mentioned. I mean, let's understand, if a Hajj operator or an Umrah operator is an IATA registered operator and he or she goes to the kingdom to sign up that memorandum of understanding and gets approved and registered by the Ministry of Hajj Umrah Division, a regulation comes directly from that in terms of the MOU that has been signed, and that is how they need to do it. But those operators themselves sometimes also flaunt the process because they're the ones who are providing the visas for these non-approved and non-accredited operators. And that is what we are trying to stop right now. To such an extent that one of the operators or bodies in this country went and wrote a document and presented it to DIRCO, basically indicating that SAHUC should not be given the regulation for Umrah in this country. They must be doing it. How can you be the player and the referee in this regard? It becomes a bit of a daunting problem.
And I get fully what you're saying, because in the end of the day, I've been toying with this idea myself, saying that if SAHUC is going to take responsibility for Hajj and Umrah, then it's going to be taking responsibility for all the good that goes on and all the bad that goes on. But if you're not, and you're disempowered when it comes to Umrah, then that's an issue and that needs to be resolved.
Well,
where the disconnect is the fact that you call yourself the South African Hajj and Umrah Council. So the public sitting out there says, here's the word Umrah.
But remember, we're still involved in that because the people who go on these particular jaunts come back to SAHUC with their queries. A Mu'tamirin will go to the kingdom, get offered a 4-star hotel, get given a 2-star hotel, come back and put it on SAHUC's table. We fight that case on behalf of that Mu'tamirin. So we're still involved, but in the back end of the process. What we're trying to do now, and it's not just a simple process to unravel, we have to work with the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, which we have done a few years ago, written to them, presented papers to them in terms of why regulation needs to be done. Through our diplomatic corps in the kingdom, they are understanding of the situation, and they too are writing to their counterparts within DIRCO to have this particular problem resolved. Inshallah, we hope that it will be resolved sooner rather than later. But at this particular point in time, again, a warning needs to be given to everybody out there. Go and seek an accredited Umrah operator to do your work. That way you're doing two things. You're removing links out of the chain, which could obviously cause an additional amount of strain and unnecessary, issue for you, or emotive issue for you. Go and do it with someone who is going to be guaranteed to be able to provide you with a visa, provide you with a ticket, provide you with the necessary accommodation. There are 9 of them in this country, and those are the 9 that you need to stick with.
When we look at, I'm not sure about this process, but I've traveled for Umrah twice. But I know that when you apply for a visa, there's some cost attached, which the
Umrah operator.
Yes, actually attaches to that. So I'm talking about Umrah specifically now. And through that, whatever it is that they're going to charge you, 900, 1,000, whatever it's going to be, for example, could you shed some light on that particular cost on their side?
From what I understand, the associate company in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia does a lot of the administrative work, and that cost is levied to the operator in South Africa in Saudi riyals. So if an operator in the Kingdom is levying 300 Saudi riyals at the current exchange rate, is going to be 12 or 1,300 rand. And that is basically the cost.
So that is coming from the Saudi side.
Yes.
That's not coming at all from the operator side at all. The public is obviously in disarray all the time about this. And
the reason for that, Faizal, is the reason for the disarray is because people don't ask the right questions of the right organizations or the right structures. They listen at a janaza, they listen at a wedding, or they listen at a gathering. And when one person has a story, by the time it gets to the 10th person, that story has changed its color in totality. That unfortunately is a problem. I attended a wedding recently where I sat at a table and people were sitting very close to me talking about SAHUC. And they were talking and they were lambasting SAHUC, and I was happy that they were lambasting SAHUC. But what I found difficulty in is that they were talking about SAHUC in 1998, 1999, in the year 2000. There has been a tremendous amount of change that has come through in terms of the equation that we find ourselves today. I'm not saying, again, that we're going to be perfect. Perfection lies with Allah. But you have to give compliment where compliment is due. And you have to criticize where criticism is due on the basis of constructive criticism. We are open to constructive criticism all the time. And I have said this on public platform, and I will say it again. If anybody out there has a better process or a better structure that they believe we can use in terms of, distributing this 2,500 quota of Hajj, bring it forward, and we will certainly work with it.
Of course. When we go forward, I just want to go back onto this issue of the Hajj and Umrah operators itself, because I think that a SAHUC might be there from a body point of view, regulating certain issues as per your mandates and as per your incorporation in terms of what the two governments has agreed upon and legislated for you to be under, and an umbrella to operate under. But the people that the public really deal with on a front and face-to-face basis is those operators. So I want to continue pushing on that, mate, if you don't mind.
No problem.
I know that your control is at a certain point, but I think the public wants to know, what is SAHUC doing, or what are you planning to do to try and reduce the incident rate? Because I speak to people, and let's just take this to a grassroots level, 80-year-olds that cry on the phone that says, Shreds the Kala took my money, and that's 3 years. 3 people passed on in that from 2014 till now. The latest we were informed, and my assistant is sitting in the studio, and he spoke to the people, and another lady has passed on. Now, I find that highly unforgivable, and I don't blame you for that. But I also beg to ask the question, that is enough being done to stop those people?
If the courts are not going to be able to stop them, because this particular matters went to court, so some of these matters went to court. If the courts are not going to stop them, how are we going to stop them?
You've seen what I've done in the last 2
Hear
weeks.
me out for a second. We can only do what is within our powers. We can put out our accredited Hajj operator list and say those are the only people that you need to do. Have a look at our current website on the Hajj registry. It states there in red, capital, bold letters, Hujjaj that are accredited must only deal with the accredited Hajj operators list that SAHUC has provided, and no one else out there, with fear of losing your money or with fear of being fleeced. That is what we've done. We cannot go further than that at this point in time. Again, in the Umrah space, 9 Umrah operators, we have provided this on our Facebook page, we have provided this on the platforms of media. there are 9 operators that you can work with. Sometimes that 9 operators may have subsidiaries that they work with that are bona fide in this particular regard. If you're not sure, phone SAHUC's offices and have a conversation with one of our ladies, and they'll be able to guide you. Again, be aware. You know, it comes back to a situation that I had 5 years ago. A guy comes in back from Hajj and he says to me, in fact, he didn't even go for Hajj. He came back from Turkey, from Istanbul. He said, but I gave the man 400,000 rand for my family. Why would you give someone 400,000 rand for your family without signing a contract? You had a flight from Johannesburg to Istanbul, but you didn't have an onward flight from Istanbul into Medina. Surely, yeah, but I trusted him like my son. Therein lies a problem. I often say to people in our roadshows, why do you sign a blank contract? And we've had situations like that in Hajj, where Haji signs a blank contract. And when you come to a dispute, but Haji, you signed the contract and it's blank. Yeah, but that's not what we agreed upon. Well, let the man put it in paper. If you don't,
you've got to tie your camel.
Exactly.
You've got to tie your camel.
You cannot blame somebody if you have faulted in this regard. Sometimes, unfortunately, our older generation or our more mature generation are not savvy enough in this regard, and they are the ones that are being fleeced the most. You have young family members, or you have a neighbor who understands these things better than you do. Rather ask that question. That way you're going to be in a better space or in a better situation. The unfortunate thing is, Faizal, that it happens more often in the less affluent communities or in the elderly generation of our community than ever before. And those people need to be stopped that are doing this.
So just jumping another matter and slightly more contentious, if you don't mind. I have no other way to put this but to put it as the person has put that, and it's up to you to respond to that. But so I get a call to say that I'm happy you're interviewing Shaheen, but he's the king of price fixing. What's your response to that?
How am I the king of price fixing? First of all, let's understand what SAHUC is all about. We have Hajj operator accreditation. Each Hajj operator on an annual basis has to provide bona fides according to a checklist that we've put together to do that. When you talk about price fixing, are you talking about it in the Hajj market or in the Umrah market?
On the Hajj side.
How is it that we fix the prices? Go and look at the prices out there from the 20 different operators that actually provided it. There's a website, and I'll give you the website. I don't have it offhand right now. This gentleman has put all the prices on one page. And go and see the competitive nature that you have in terms of price fixing. There's no such thing as price fixing in South Africa because operators themselves, within family structures that operate independently of each other, will undercut one another by $1,000 or $2,000. So where's the price fixing? Secondly, each Hajj operator goes to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia themselves and does the necessary negotiations with whoever they want to negotiate in terms of the buildings that they are offering. Now take the prices of Hajj and go and replicate that in Umrah. And go and see bookings.com. Look at the similarities in prices and find out if there's price fixing. This person, whomever accuses me of price fixing, has absolutely no clue what he or she is talking about. Because there is no such thing as price fixing. And let's give you an example of this from an international perspective. In 2015, myself and my head of mission were invited to a conference on Hajj administration in Malaysia, hosted by Tabung Haji. Turkey, Nigeria, Senegal, Maldives, Philippines, Bangladesh, to name a few of the many that were present. Pakistan. One of the key questions was asked is, what is the average price in dollars that you people pay for Hajj? Do you know what the average price in dollars is for South Africa? Less than $4,000.
$4,000?
Yes, less than that. For a 6-week package, couple room and moving to Azizia. These people were all $5,000 up. So where's price fixing? There's no such thing as price fixing. Khidmatul Awam comes out and they put their prices on the table. Al-Anwa comes out, Al-Anwa Express, and they put their prices on the table. Miraj Travel in Durban come up. We don't fix the prices. We don't regulate the prices. It's a free market. South Africa is an open trade market. Everybody is allowed to go and do and trade as they feel. That is why we don't have 3 or 4 operators, because the question of collusion could come in. We have a diversity of packages out there. We have a diversity of pricing out there. You can get Hajj from 28,000 Rand up to 100,000 Rand. The choice is yours, Faizal.
Correct. Shaheen, I want to use the balance of the interview for something that is more forward planning and forward thinking.
Sure.
Because I think that if you look at South Africa today, we have lots of challenges, and we see that happening in the presidency, and we see all of that. And South Africans generally, I think, are feeling that, our interest is not being protected. We need to watch out over every shoulder to make sure that we don't get robbed here, there, and the other. And then, as I mentioned, I have taken a very direct stance on Hajj, against Hajj and Umrah fraud, and that's particularly out of one interest. I don't have any business in Hajj and Umrah, as you know that, for someone that sits in SAHUC, but my interest is the poor people that cry on the phone, and I want to try my best to try and protect those people and engage everybody and anybody that's involved on any level to protect those people, be that the community safety, whether that be the police, whether that be the commercial crimes unit or the Hawks. But I think that it's too much for me to listen to someone cry on the phone and say that I can't go. I mean, one woman phones me and says, and listen to this, and I don't like talking about the story because it really gets me going. She says that she's 8 years old and cannot travel anymore, but she paid the money about 3.5 to 4 years ago to a fraudulent operator. And if we ever get any money out of people, which is not our intention in any case with the campaign I'm running, the campaign is there to ward off any further evils coming along, because going through that process is a story on its own. And once $1 million is gone, believe me, you can turn every rock around, you will not find that money. So I know about that, but my intention is to try and inhibit further offences down the line, so that an 8-year-old that says, I've never been there, but I can't travel anymore because I'm too ill now. And so if you ever find the money, she says, distribute that to somebody that could go. Now, that in essence just breaks my heart, and I feel that we all need to unite, and I'm calling on public, on yourself, on government, to close the net and the loopholes further so that we can protect the people. Can you give me a list of points, again, to rehash, that the public needs to look out for to make the right choice?
Well, I think the first and most important factor here is that SAHUC has always publicized its accredited Hajj operator list. We have always been vocal.
But that's online.
No. Hang on. Let's not mince words about this. When I say we publish it on our website. So if a person is accredited, that person goes to select an operator online. He or she cannot go and trade with somebody on the outside who purports to be an operator away from that structure.
But the point I'm talking about
Allow me to finish. We distribute that information as far and wide as possible through the media houses. We distribute that information, yes, to the media houses.
Right.
Okay. We also, at our outreach programs and our Hajj awareness programs, facilitate and make sure people are aware of the Hajj operators that are accredited. To such an extent, we actually bring those Hajj operators to display their Hajj packages in our program. So Hujjaj will come and listen to the do's and don'ts in terms of what the Ministry of Hajj and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia requires. And over and above that, on the periphery, Joburg, Durban and Cape Town, they have all the accredited Hajj operators out there providing their packages, providing their wares, being able to interact with the Hujjaj. So there is no reason why a Haji would want to go and deal with someone that is away from that process.
Do you think that part of it is perhaps, let's look at the Western Cape, and let's look at places like Mitchell's Plain, with all due respect to Mitchell's Plain, we find slightly more economic challenges around these areas, and so when people come to them and they say, I'll offer you a package for 5,000 Rand cheaper, the old lady sitting there, maybe that's a bit in a bubble, in a little flat there, would perhaps say yes.
Faizal, it is a big problem. How do you stop that? Back in 2011, we had an operator from here, from the Western Cape, who had 96 people's money taken, promising them that they were going to get Hajj visas. 96. Promising them that they were going to get Hajj visas. We got to find out about this. We wrote letters to this organization. We actually went so far as bringing an interdict to this organization.
And we're saying the Hajj visas need to come through your office.
Let me finish up and I'll explain to you. We even had a representative from the Ministry of Hajj on one of the radio programs saying that this can never happen because all visas have to come via a process through SAHUC and through SAHUC structure. A body outside came to SAHUC and said, can you please help and give 96 visas to these people? So what they're asking me now is, a civil body, take 96 people out of the queue and give it to these people who are affected. What makes them different from the people that are queuing and waiting for the visas on the inside? The point that is being made here is, and the people fleece them. The visas are being printed in Pretoria. We've got the passports here. Someone's coming to paste them in here. First of all, that is questionable. When someone says something like that to you, you got to go to your imam of the masjid, or you got to go to SAHUC's office in Cape Town and say, listen, I've been told this, where do I go? There are enough member organizations here. I've listed them earlier, Majlis Ashura Al-Islami, MJC. These people all know the processes of SAHUC. If you believe that that is the people that you're going to get good guidance from, then go and talk to them if you don't want to come to SAHUC's offices. So there are mechanisms and processes in place, but you're never going to stop the guy trying to do that. You know, I always say it takes two hands to clap. And it's unfortunate that they prey on the vulnerable. That is the biggest problem. How you stop that is by continuously talking to people and by continuously reminding people. Alhamdulillah, the outreach program that we have in the Gauteng region, we started in Polokwane, we went to Middelburg, we went to Springs, we went to Rustenburg, we went to Lenasia South. We're doing it in various towns. People are getting to have a better understanding and perspective, especially the people that are coming in, which are slightly more advanced in age, that are coming in and listening to what SAHUC has to say, giving us robust questions, giving us robust discussions in order to better understand the process. So when they go to a janazah, when they go to a wedding, they're not going to hear the wrong things. They can actually go out there and say, no, but you know what, SAHUC is not doing that, SAHUC is doing this, that or the other. So what you people are saying is totally unrelated.
If you're going forward and we're saying that, and we know this, any organization, whether it's my organization or any organization, doesn't have it all right at the moment.
Absolutely.
And we see that from the top of this country right down to the bottom. We don't have it all right, but I suppose our attitudes to getting it right might be a determining factor in terms of how we get that all right. What's your message to South Africans?
Right now, the message to the South Africans is as follows. If you don't understand anything relating to Hajj and Umrah, or if you fear that something is not right in terms of an offer that is being made to you, reach out to SAHUC. Earlier on, you alluded to the fact that people regard us as a bunch of mafia. We're not mafia. We don't eat people up. We are fearful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we want to make sure that we can protect you as the mu'tamirin or as the hujjaj in that regard. So if you have any issues relating to it, or anything that is out of the ordinary relating to Hajj and Umrah, come and have a conversation with us. We certainly will guide you, we will assist you, and we will do everything in our power to protect the hujjaj and the mu'tamirin out there.
Do you think that going down the line that things might change in terms of, are there any immediate changes that the public can look out for around the new Hajj coming up and maybe the next 2 years that might be a shift in dynamics in terms of how things are being dealt with?
At the moment, with regards to the way the process is, remember we are governed by the protocols that we have to sign with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and we fall into line with all of that. In the last 3 years, there's been a significant shift and a significant improvement. A few years ago, there was a Hajj operator that unfortunately absconded with people's money. 27 people were left wanting. We facilitated that and stepped into that regard, and alhamdulillah, the people went for Hajj. Now, every Hajj operator goes through an electronic process with the Ministry of Hajj after they are approved with us. So we give them a logon code to that system. They have to upload their contracts. They have to upload all the information of each hujjaj, flight schedules, etc. So nothing can go wrong in terms of this process. No visa will be issued to any Haji unless all of those contracts and all of those processes are put into place. That is why we started off early with our accreditation process this year, in order to ensure that we timeously complete, and hopefully by Ramadan we want to be complete with all our structures, so that during Ramadan, if it is at all possible, the embassy could issue visas.
Just a quick look at the numbers again. How many applicants are you getting as opposed to how many people can travel? And then what is the fall-off figure on that? Because I do know that people also do request and apply for accreditation. Yeah. And at some point down the line, something goes on, somebody dies, something happens and they can't make it. What is that fall-off figure and how does it impact you?
Well, let's start off with the following, right? As I mentioned earlier, we have in excess of 22,000 first-time hujjaj in our queue. And that is not only for this year.
That's all in the queue at the moment.
That is in the queue from 1438 right through until 1445. Okay.
That's a bit of a long...
Yeah, I mean, it's about, if you take 22,000 divided by 2,500, you're looking at plus minus 8 years, that you're going to have to facilitate that particular process. Having said that, we have between a 35 and 45% dropout rate. People's circumstances change, as you've said, whatever the case may be. And as late as yesterday, we had people that were asking us to transfer them. So it is an administrative nightmare. At the end of the day, pre-planning is vital and very important in this whole process. If you've made an application for Hajj, you need to make sure that you put your finances in order. You need to make sure that you put your logistics in order, leave from your work, facilities for your children, etc., etc. In order for the time when you are accredited, you can then make a concerted decision whether you're going to go, whether you're not going to go in terms of that scenario. But if you at that particular point in time are still unsure that you're not going to go, rather transfer your accreditation or your application, because we give you an option when you log onto our system. Either accept the accreditation or transfer your application to a year in the future. So you could transfer to 39, 40, 41, 42, depending entirely on how you plan and process yourself. I'll give you an example in Malaysia for utilizing, and I'm going to digress to them quite a lot. They put you into the queue, but you only come out of that queue into the eligible queue if you have a minimum amount of about 4,000 ringgit in your account. We don't have that situation where we are able to see how much money you have in your bank account. But what we can do is we give you the option to defer in terms of that process from a date and time. There is an administrative nightmare, and it is an administrative problem when a person accepts, sits on the acceptance, and only decides at the 11th hour, because other people down the queue could have actually benefited out of that. And now you sit with a scenario where, for 3 months you've been in the queue from the 10th of January to date, you've been in the queue, and you suddenly decide, no, I'm not going to go. It's being selfish to other people as well. Okay. And I think we need to embrace the Ubuntu way, as they would call it in South Africa, but more so we have to embrace Ikram-e-Muslim, where we must want for others that we would want for ourselves. So if we can't manage it, let us give it off to someone else sooner rather than later.
Is SAHUC extremely meticulous around the aspect of who actually goes and who doesn't go in terms of accreditation? For example, you probably know the biggest allegation is the fact that that guy jumped the queue. How do you answer that?
Very simply, our system is externally audited by the Association of Muslim Lawyers and Accountants. We don't put out an accreditation list until that particular audit is complete. So once that audit is complete, then the list will go out. So we publicize the list that we have. The only time a person can jump the queue is if he is selected as a mahram by a female that has applied earlier in the queue. She's entitled to a mahram because according to Sharia, every female is entitled to a mahram. Only then would he now jump the queue in that regard. But there is no way that anybody is accelerated up the queue.
Doesn't matter who you are.
Doesn't matter who you are. We have applications like that by the thousands. And we tell them straight, unfortunately, you're prejudicing other people that are ahead of you in the queue. There is absolutely no way. And it also doesn't matter what conditions. We'll find that someone will come and say, I'm at stage 3 cancer, or I'm like this, or I'm like that, or this is my condition. Please, can you do that? Every single applicant in the queue is as important as the other. We don't let emotion come into this equation, Faizal. And that is probably why sometimes the tag of being a mafia is also, connotated to SAHUC. We don't allow emotion to come into the equation. We say it as it is, that date and time priority takes precedence over everything. First time Hujjaj only. The only repeats that you would find are those mahrams that have made Hajj before, that are repeat to any of their female family members.
In conclusion, so, South Africa has become a strange place when it comes to politics and community issues and organizational issues. And a new trend is to say something must fall. So people are saying SAHUC must fall. You've got the Zuma must fall, you've got corruption must fall. So everything must fall. I believe that maybe sometimes things need to take a U-curve in business, which is a slight fall. But after that, it needs to pick up. And we need to have the attitude that, and I know that there's a spate of our viewers that is sitting by saying that it sounds like I agree with you, but it's not about that. I'm saying that we need to work together as a community, and sometimes we do take a fall, and that fall is there to simply help us through that curve back up again, because we learn lessons in that space. But what's your answer to people say, hashtag SAHUC must fall?
You know, Faizal, we've come through a tremendous amount of peaks and troughs in the history of SAHUC. To such an extent that at one point in time, SAHUC actually was broke. There was no money in SAHUC. Okay, we go through a process where we run through peaks and valleys, and right now the fashionable thing on social media is hashtag this one must fall or that one must fall. My mother always used to say to me, rather be a fool out of fashion than a fashionable fool. You know, so we need to understand where that comes from. But at the end of the day, for people to make statements like that, they need to understand the intricacies of SAHUC. They need to understand the structures that SAHUC goes through. They need to understand the policies and processes, which we are busy unpacking and have been unpacking in terms of the situation. Once they understand that, they will see things differently. But the one big problem that we have in South Africa, unfortunately, is that we don't play the ball, we play the man. And that is where this whole hashtag issue comes into the equation. If you look at, we spoke about it before this program. If you look at the President of South Africa, he looks like a very decent human being. You know, whatever the case may be, different people may have different opinions on him. Or if you look at different people in different aspects of our community, they look like decent people. But when it comes to the tangibility of the ability to do what is necessary, do they have that ability to do it? Emotion in SAHUC or in Hajj is one of the key factors that drives the psyche of people. Because the emotion in certain aspects relating to your query or to your inquiry, whether you get the right answer or the wrong answer, drives your decision about the person that has actually given you that response. And that unfortunately is wrong, because people don't take a step back and see it for what it is. They see it for what it isn't. And they think that you are prejudicing them. And I'm going to allude to a personal situation. 2015, my son-in-law in the queue, bona fide, applied in May 2012, he gets accredited for Hajj. My daughter looks at me and says, Dad, can I make a request to go with my husband for Hajj? I said to her, you have made Hajj with me in 2003. The answer is no. You stay at home. But Dad, there's an unwritten policy that a young girl who has made Hajj with her father can apply, and you know it will be considered. I said, yes, it can be considered, but not for you. You will stay at home. My son-in-law made Hajj on his own that year. I said, there's
You felt that there might be a slight internal conflict there?
No, not at all. I would recuse myself from that process. I said, if I have to recuse myself from that process, so will the rest of the committee. Because they know my daughter, they know my family. And that is the extent.
And you just be opening up lots of questions.
That is the extent to which we go. We step aside. I don't run SAHUC from a perspective of, you know, I'm going to look after my interests and my family's interests. I had an uncle who was in the queue. 11 people in the family were going, and asked the question, why can't he go? I said, because it's not his time. He's not accredited yet. When he is accredited, he will go. And alhamdulillah, a year down the line, he got accredited and he went. We don't do things that is going to be beneficial to people from an internal perspective.
People that's calling for the fall of SAHUC, and they specifically say SAHUC must fall, are you open to them continually contacting you and say, let's talk about this?
Faizal, there's a group in Johannesburg who actually did that. And we invited them to talk to us. They gave us 18 or 20 questions to answer, which we duly answered. This was an offshoot from the Hajj, from the Umrah visa fee committee. And we gave them the answer, and we provided them with a copy of the Constitution. And we said, tear it apart. Tear it apart and come back to us and tell us what you think we need to improve on and what you think we need to change. It is months that have gone by and nothing has come fruitful out of that. We presented to them, we sat with them, and we gave them what we thought was necessary. We opened our cards on the table, and we will invite every other organization or person who thinks that they can help us and guide us in a better way to do that. I again state, we are not perfect. We will always make mistakes, because that to err is human. I think that is important for us to understand. Perfection lies with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the last perfect person is our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who died over many centuries ago. We need to understand and embrace that, and we need to understand the role that we do. If I'm not in SAHUC tomorrow, if anybody else that is around our table is not in SAHUC tomorrow, someone else will be in SAHUC tomorrow. But as long as it is there for the improvement and for making sure that the community's interests are being looked after and not individuals' interests in that regard. I, alhamdulillah, have a day job, so do all the people around my table. And how we balance ourselves, only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, because He is the one that puts us there. And it is through His qudrat that we will not be there tomorrow.
Shane, thank you for joining me on the show. I hope that we've managed to go through some issues that you wanted to go through, and that you and your organization and the public feel at ease with some of the issues, because our intention, as I said, is to have a robust discussion.
Absolutely.
And that does not mean that we need to fight about this in continuum. It simply means that we're there to discuss the issue, go forward, because I think there are many things that the Muslim community in South Africa needs to talk about, and we need to talk about those issues, and it doesn't mean that we're fighting about them when we're talking about them. Thank you for joining me.
Jazakallah khairan for the opportunity, and I'd just like to say from SAHUC's perspective that we are always open, for anybody to come forward and have a conversation with us, and robust discussion we are always willing to have. I'd like to thank Deen TV for hosting us. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
It's a pleasure. Shaheen Essop, the president of SAHUC, and he's come into studio today to talk about some of those issues that has transpired on the last episode, and also some of the issues that continue to linger in your minds on social media and that sort of thing. So I'm sitting in the middle of two things, and the one is that I need to think about how we go forward all the time, and I always think about those things. I don't like just doing interviews and let them just hang out in there. I think that we play a role in what we're doing in trying to shape public opinion on various issues. Having said that, my opinion remains right in the center. I have had allegations against myself in the last couple of days that I might be in cahoots with SAHUC, and that's absolutely not true at all. I've got no interest in the business of Hajj and Umrah. I haven't even been there for Hajj, and hopefully I'll also be there very soon. But having said that, I have made a request to the public which you, the public, have not come up with in the last couple of weeks, and that's only fair for me to say. I have asked you to put your proof on the table, and you haven't done that. And so therefore, I'm not saying, and the proof does not count when you make statements on my Facebook. Although I do read all those things, I've asked for tangible proof, and no one has forwarded me any written proof. If that ever comes up, please contact SAHUC directly, and they're happy to deal with those issues. Thank you for joining me. Goodbye.